Okay, here we have our top 3 moments from the Thornhill CFC Rapid 6 Thornhill Chess Club. And this tournament occurred on November 15th, Sunday, 2020. And here we have each moment with thematic titles corresponding to the theme of each game. So the first game is Curvy Hat as black and Almanac 2050 as white. This was the second round of the tournament. The tournament was 6 rounds Swiss, so that everyone could get to play white and black, and we have the time control of 15 plus 10. So after the first round, Curvy Hat and Almanac have won their first game. Curvy Hat is one of our top club players, and here we'll get to see if he can keep his streak going and continue to prove that he's better than almost everyone else. Anyway, this game, it lasted 141 moves, and most of the excitement of this game took place in the end game. But this game was probably the most exciting game in the whole tournament, as because it lasted so long, everyone got to finish their games and see this game, where one player was able to checkmate with 2 bishops. Okay. Here we have a Prince Sicilian, okay, and it's important that black plays e5, right, to punish, sort of, not really punish, but because white is playing a sort of passive move by playing f3, just protecting e5, black lashes out with protecting e4, black lashes out with e5, and we have simple development. And I like that white is able to castle kingside. He castles kingside in order to, in my opinion, throw black off, because black players who play the Sicilian are used to having white castle queenside. Like, personally, I prefer this because it's more of a positional approach. White is going to focus on controlling the d5 square, and black is going to focus on getting rid of this d-pawn weakness and get some piece activity. Again, then we have a typical b-pawn advance, gain space on the queen side. This is good, right? You get more control of c4, advance the knight to b6 and c4. And we have getting away from this diagonal, another good move. Rook here, rook there. I'm not sure about this move because this pawn is already protected, and I think you would rather get your pawn here and then maybe advance the f-pawn, because either white plays in the center and consolidates, controls this d5 square and consolidates, or he needs to launch launch an attack on the king side, because white has no other plan. Alright, if he's just sitting around, black is just gonna run over him. So we have knight d1, d5. Black is able to get rid of this weakness. This is a strategic win for him. And white plays probably, in my opinion, the worst move in the game. Bishop takes b6. This allows black to gain the double bishops, and he has dark square weaknesses. This bishop does not have a lot of vision. It's blocked by the b-pawn and the f-pawn, and he has no real piece activity. Black is just going to run over him. Like, from this point, it's going to be tough for white to hold off black. And then white allows black to potentially advance and have a protected passed pawn. So white is definitely not comfortable with this position. He is not used to it. He probably, this is a guy who's under 1600, I think, CFC rated, for those that play in Canada, and he probably is not familiar with this position. And it's always good to just, when you play a game and you're in an opening that you don't know, you always study up on it. Like, maybe win, maybe lose, but make sure you study up on it always after. Then we have development, queen back, and just black winning a pawn, white getting that pawn back, but black is getting lots of piece activity. 2 rooks on the second rank, lining up, deadly attack. I'm predicting mate in 7 moves, even though that doesn't happen. It could very well happen if white isn't careful. So we have defending e2. Now we have queen here, knight here, and then we have the capture. Okay, so here, black captures, but it is very possible for black to actually just take with the rook, right? This rook is under attack, so he wants to trade this rook and go through a long variation. But if black takes this rook, this bishop, and he captures, and then he captures, and captures, white has a knight that isn't going anywhere. It's going to be hard to get rid of this knight because this rook is inactive, and he's probably could get this bishop here, target that knight, and potentially have an attack, right? This knight can do wondrous things. Always keep your knight if you want to have attack. Like, you can have a discovered check. Then the knight is always tricky, and I would prefer, I think he should have captured on e2 and keep that knight. But we have a capture, recapture, capture, and then we have, okay, so this is, we have simplified to the endgame, where white has the rook, black has the 2 bishops. Obviously a win for black, but he still needs to prove himself, because this is not going to be an easy win. White could very well have tricks up his sleeve. This game lasted 141 moves. We are 29 moves in. This is not, we still have 112 moves left, so we still have a lot to go through. So we have a bunch of moves, trade of pawns. White advances his pawn. Black is able to stop it with his bishop, and he eventually wants to bring his king over to stop it, which he does. And then black, you can see the time control. They're already at 64 moves, 45 seconds, 20 seconds. Still have lots of moves to go. So black is able to get that pawn, and he brings his king over. Black is able to bring his pawn and get his king over, and eventually try and get his other pawns going and get rid of white's h-pawn. So that's what he's trying to do right now, trying to get his rook, white's rook, off the 5th rank right here. And tough time for him to do that, but eventually he does. And now he's going to execute the advance of the f-pawn. Lots of checks. Still want you to show you the moves. I don't want to skip to the very end just to see how this game progresses. So here's the key moment. Black has the 2 bishops, and white has king. Now, we have seen grandmasters not know how to checkmate with a knight and bishop. Sometimes, I'm not sure, maybe this happened before where they didn't know how to checkmate with 2 bishops. But it's definitely happened with bishop and knight. You have to know your endgames. Make sure you always know your 2 bishop endgame, your bishop knight endgame. It's always important to keep that in mind, because people say, oh, it'll never happen in my game. It will definitely happen in your game. Okay, so we are at move 116, 25 moves. We will see whether it ends up in a checkmate or a stalemate. So now what black needs to do is just corner white, put him at the, even just putting him at the edge of the board is good enough. You can execute checkmate easily from there. You just simply push him and slowly push him over to the corner using your bishops. Okay, so now he's pushed off. He's pushed him to the back rank. So now he has restricted the white king. So he has his 2 bishops going like this. He's going to move this king out of the way eventually and corner black. So here, now the white king is restricted, and it can only go to these squares, right? And now white moves his king there. He can only move back. Now he only has d8 and c8 to move to. And then we have bishop there, another good move. And then here, black plays a waiting move, which is good. And now here, black actually misses this. We're at move 1, 2, 8. We still have 13 moves, but black actually has mate in 4, right? All he needs to do is just push the white king to the corner. So he can play bishop e7, which will restrict the king to these 3 squares. And then after he moves, you can actually restrict him further. And very important, don't restrict the king to only 2 squares. Make sure that once when the white king is only restricted to 2 squares, make sure that the remaining 2 moves, the remaining moves you use to take away both those squares are checks. So 2 squares left, you make a waiting move. Now this move comes with check. Black has 1 square to go, and then checkmate. Make sure the last 2 moves always come with checkmate. And this is one of the most instructive game out of all the games, because we have a double bishop endgame, which is rare, and we have important middle game themes, and how even like black could have actually probably won earlier if he maybe could have maybe developed a better plan in his middle game, because he had tons of space and he was up in material. But this is still very instructive. So when I was watching this, I was a little suspicious, thinking that maybe black didn't know how to checkmate, because this isn't the end of the game. This is what should have happened. But instead, after king c8, he plays king c6, and he allows white back to the middle of the back rank. I mean, okay, so he's just not playing around. I don't know what he's doing. Like, I understand that Kirby Hat is the one who's black, and he has 30 seconds, so maybe he doesn't have that much time to think, right? So, okay, now he knows. He's just going to restrict him. He made sure he didn't, if he had checked here, it would have just pushed him here, which would have been a useless move, so he made sure to restrict this square so that he only has these 2 squares, right? And now, if he checks here, if black checks here, he's just going to be pushed back, and you're going to have to restrict this square again. So make sure that when the white king comes here, you make a waiting move. Again, you want the first check to come when the king is on, not in the corner, but the square away from the corner. So you make a waiting move, right? You make a waiting move, like what black did here, and then you deliver the check when the king is 1 square away from the corner, and then the checkmate. And black wins by checkmate. Very instructive game. I'm actually commend white for letting this play out, because he could have easily resigned and just finish the game and move on to the next round, but he allowed this to play out, and I think this is a very instructive moment. And black demonstrated a good way. Black demonstrated his understanding of how to checkmate with 2 bishops. And now we have the second game. This is the second moment, but really it's a game. And this is a game that I played and that I lost. But the reason I chose this is because it was very instructive on how my opponent was able to play and defeat me. Here we have Queen's Gambit. I played white. My opponent, Retarded Platypus, played black. Here we have a Catalan. Now I like the Catalan because I have my fan shadowed bishop, and I have play on the queen side, and like there's multiple reasons why I like the Catalan. It adds to light square control, and it makes your king very safe. It gets you play on the queen side. Black isn't used to it because most black Queen's Gambit declined players like to play against just the normal Queen's Gambit with bishop to f4 or bishop to g5. So here we have e4. I choose not to capture, but to develop. I don't want to waste time recapturing, because then he'll be able to develop his bishop and give him some time to develop. I want to develop all my pieces in advance. So here I let him protect it, then I attack the c4 pawn and recapture. Now I have development. Even though black is also technically developed, I have more space. My bishop has so much potential down this diagonal. I have an open c file. I could potentially control this square with bishop to e3. His pawn structure is not looking great in my opinion. He has that backward c pawn that I want to play against. Even though I'm down a pawn, I want this c pawn to remain because it blocks his bishop, and there's a potential weakness on c5. And I have no problem doubling my e pawn because it will force his knight to go back, and I will have fast development, control of the c5 square, which is good because it hems in this bishop. That's also another reason to play the Catalan. I want to make sure that my opponent doesn't get any activity. And I also have kingside space, so I could potentially launch an attack and get my king to safety. But that's some of the reasons that I like to play the Catalan. So here, I play e5. Okay, so e5. This, in my opinion, is the move that loses me the game. I think that because of this move, black is able to play c5 and execute the trade of the light square bishops and forever weakening my light squares. Now, at first glance, I thought I could take this pawn, and then if he takes, I take, he takes, I have a fork, right? And then you might think, well, can't he just play queen b7? And then after I take, he plays after I take, he plays bishop here and threatens checkmate. And if I play here, he will be able to check me here, right? He'll be able to check me here, and I'm gonna be mated. Like if I capture, he could just checkmate. But the problem is that if he moves back, I actually have a checkmate of my own. Queen takes h7, and this knight is actually protecting h7, so the only move is to capture, and I have a checkmate here. So at first glance you think it's a mistake because he plays queen b7. All this happened in the game, but he didn't play bishop h3. He actually captured my knight. Now, in this position, I'm up in material, but I am at a huge disadvantage because I am so weak on the light squares, and I wasn't able to consolidate and trade pieces. Like, I wasn't able to get this light square bishop, I wasn't able to execute the trade of the queens, and he was just able to run over me. So I play f4 because if I don't, he's going to play bishop h3 and threaten checkmate. So I want to preemptively guard g2. He plays bishop h3, I develop. He develops, I bring my queen there to protect g2. I'll just keep it there. And I also don't want this bishop coming in, so I want to guard this square. Right? If it comes here, I can just take. He takes, I have mate. So he plays bishop a3. Another good move. Blocks this a pawn from potential activity, right? If he played some normie move and I played here, I could actually restrict black's activity, which is also one of my main goals of this position, because black's only chance for winning is activity, and he needs to do whatever he can to run over me, or else I will beat him positionally and materially. So I play after bishop a3, rook d3. He plays there to protect his bishop. Another good move, in my opinion. Play rook there. I want to double. I want to potentially trade rooks, trade down. Always trade down. When you're up in material, you just want to trade down to the end game so that your opponent does not have a way of attacking you through piece activity. He plays h5, good move. He can also use h5. He will, in his mind, I think that in his mind he's thinking he's going to throw anything he wants at me. And the h-pawn, not only does it give him a getaway square, he could throw that h-pawn at me and ruin my king side. So I take, which it wins me a pawn, but I still don't know what to do after this. Like, I take the pawn and I'm like, from this position, I have no idea what to do. If you guys could give me some suggestions, it would be great. Now this is a blunder. This rook to d7 is a blunder. And I'll leave it to you guys to figure out Actually, no. You guys can see the move. Okay, so the move here, even though I'm attacking this queen, I'm attacking the queen, he can actually just take. So, black can just take, and if I recapture, he's going to come now with check. I'm going to put my queen in the way, and I'm just down a bishop. I'm just down. I'm down in material, right? He got my rook for free. And if I try and protect this way, he's going to checkmate me. Like this. So that's a blunder. My opponent does not notice it. He plays queen e4. Right? And I play rook back, because then I realize my mistake. I should keep my pieces close to my king so I can protect it. And then he puts his queen there, which gave me a little... It gave me a little relief, because he's now bringing... Now the pawn is in the way. His queen is not going to be directly attacking. But I was also worried about this bishop coming back here to c5. I was worried he was going to harass my bishop, and then potentially, like, make the advance, and after I recapture, he attacks my bishop. And if I move it anywhere, I'm going to have a hard time defending it. So I play queen e3, allowing his rook. So I think his threat is to play rook c2. He got his queen to this diagonal because he wanted to bring his rook down to c2 and check and launch an attack on me. That's the reason he played queen e4. And I don't notice the attack. I should have played this rook down here, in my opinion. That would have gotten me to consolidate, and I make the blunder. Even though I made a blunder before, he didn't capitalize on it. He capitalizes on this one. Rook c2. Another mistake. Now he can pin the rook to my queen. And if I capture, he just recaptures, and he has an attack. And if I capture, he has an attack, check, and he has many ways to attack. I mean, he can bring his pieces to my back rank, and I cannot do anything. Actually, no. I was afraid that he was just gonna attack me. Maybe he's not gonna deliver the check. Maybe not yet. Maybe he was just gonna wait. But I don't know. I do not like this position. I did not want to capture. So I play my queen back, thinking that I'm gonna be able to defend. And now his threat right here is to come to f3 and deliver mate on f1. I was thinking he can only deliver mate on g2, but I didn't see that he could come to f1. So I bring my bishop back, which is a blunder, and I lose the game. No way to get out of this. If I bring my queen back, he's just gonna mate me. Okay, so that's the importance of the light squares. When you're playing an opening like the Catalan, where you weaken your light squares with the pawns and you hope to gain control of those light squares with your bishop, you have to either preserve the bishop or get rid of his light square bishop and his knights, so that he won't be able to exploit it. Because I was up in material, but I did not find a way to consolidate my light squares. Okay, moment number 3 is for those who are lower rated. I think it's a very important theme. It's called deflection. It's a basic middle game tactic for those 1600 players, because this game is between players under 1600 that are in the club, and it shows how the understanding of basic tactics can help you win games. So here we have the Italian game that is played through all levels of chess, and we have so far book moves: castle, castle, bishop back, knight here. Now I don't like this move because it blocks the rook, and even though it creates a battery, it would have been better to play a3, bring the queen to c2, get it on an open file, and connect the rooks. This blocks the rooks, and he still plays a3 is the problem, and he's losing defense of the d4 pawn. So he plays his knight back, loses the d pawn, f3, bishop e6, brings his queen, moves his queen again. Now he's moved his queen twice, needs to develop his rooks. Black has already developed pieces, put his pieces in the center, is up in material. Another good move. He has 2 powerful knights that can be protected with c5 and g5. And now Black gets aggressive, and he is not sacrificing, but he is not defending this pawn. He's not defending this bishop, because he's going to use these knights in the attack. So right now, we have rook to f2. Now, we can make note of some tactics. Some would say knight f3, he can't take because then you have checkmate, but black can just capture. And we also have what was played in the game, knight h3, and he takes, and then white says, you know what, I'm just going to take on e6, and then you're going to take back, and I'm going to take with check, and I'll at least get some of the material back. And then he plays his queen back, and then black ignores his knight and threatens white's knight, and also threatens piece activity because this bishop is blocking the rook, and white's king is a bit vulnerable. So now we have knight b3, then we have knight there with two threats, knight to e3 check, which will allow the rook to come in on d1, or knight capturing on h2 check, and then advancing to f4, basically clamping down on the dark squares and eventually checkmating white. And what white does, he takes the knight. And black was able to calculate that if white takes the knight, he can take back, check. White has two moves. He can play either e1 or g1. g1 was played in the game, but let's take a look at what happens to e1, right? You could say, oh, you know, you could just pin the queen. Black has an even better move. It's just black has maybe, you know, black has some moves, but he could play. Actually, no. Maybe this is the best move, right? There could be some bad moves in the position. I might be thinking there are or there aren't, but I don't know. But obviously white didn't want to lose his queen, so he plays king to g1, and now we have a deflection tactic present in the position, and you guys can pause to find it. Don't look at the chess notation. We have queen to a3. Queen to e3. If black moves his king, he's going to lose his queen and the game. So black has to capture, right? This is an undefended queen. He's like, ooh, maybe I get a free queen, but no. Black actually is able to checkmate white through, even if white brings his queen back, black is still able to checkmate white because this rook controls the f-file, and he is able to deliver mate, and white suffers from back rank issues and the fact that he advances f-pawn to f3, which is a very weakening move in my opinion. And not only in my opinion, many people's opinion. So, even though he checks with an undefended queen on e3, white actually resigned in this position. Black was able to deliver check even though his piece is undefended, because if white captures, he leaves the defensive d1. So white is overloaded. White's queen is defending too many squares, e3 and d1. He has jobs. He has too many jobs, right? He should have gotten this bishop out to some square and have this rook defend the back rank. But he never even moved this rook in the whole game. So it's as if he was playing down a rook the whole time. Black was able to use all of his pieces and his f-pawn to launch an attack on the king. So white is overloaded with the defensive d1 and e3. If he wasn't defending e3, black could come down and just trade pieces or develop checkmate, because this rook just not doing anything. And that's the game. Those are the top 3 moments. So I think this tournament had skilled players, right? People who are like near 2,000, 1,900 rated, and then there were some instructive moments for players rated around that range. Then there were instructive moments around the U1600 range, where basic tactics and long-term thinking and themes were able to basically decided who was going to win, who was going to use their advantages, to the thematic advantages and disadvantages to win the game. And that's why, like, we had 26 people come out to not come out. This was online. We had 26 people play, and 6 rounds. Lots of games. Which provides the opportunity for lots of good games, and we had them. There are many more good games. You guys can check the tournament out. I'm going to provide the link in the description. You guys can check it out and find maybe someone you know played, and you could check their game out. 6 rounds for every player. Everyone got to play as white and black. If you guys want to join the club, I'll also provide a link for that in the description as well. It's an online chess club, so as long as you're in Canada, you can play. Like, you can play in the CFC rated tournaments. If not, you can just play in the normal weekly tournaments. But anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.